welcome to the Talking Timelines podcast. We are four women with 4 points of view and 4 accents with one common goal: to share insights and information about what's going on in the world from a higher consciousness perspective. No BS, no PC, just lots of ideas that you won't hear on mainstream media. We chat, we laugh, and most of all, we shed and share light. Join us each week as we talk timelines.
Welcome to Talking Timelines. Joining me today are my friends Susan, Laura and Lisa, and we've got some great conversation for you today. We've just been having a chat before the show and then we decided that we would record it. So Laura had a question and I'm going to let you say your question, Laura.
Well, this comes from a conversation that you and I were having the other night that I thought about afterwards, and it really got me thinking either how much people are either misinformed or just partially informed or kind of have a very different idea about choosing timelines. And I thought this was very interesting since our last podcast was all about timelines. And I think people have this, well, I guess I was partially, I have a little bit more information than the average person, but I think people just think, oh, I'm going to pick a timeline, or that's not going to be in my timeline, that it's that easy just to say, I'm going to go to the grocery store, that it's just that easy to say it and then it's a done deal. And what you had shared with me was that obviously it's way deeper than that, but it actually requires work on our part in order to clear past stuff that maybe actually we're headed to a certain timeline that we're not completely aware of, or we think we've made a choice and we think we've kind of done some stuff to be on a specific timeline. But what you shared with me made me realize that it's actually much deeper than that. And I'd love for you to explain actually how it works in terms of past lives or past trauma that we may actually have that is steering us in a certain way based on also what's going on with the collective.
Okay, I've tried to share information with people before on my Instagram channel, and basically, when we're saying choosing a timeline, I'm saying choose a timeline and then work towards creating that timeline. The timeline exists, everything exists, but we have to, by creating that timeline in our reality, we have to raise our frequency to match the timeline that we want to travel down. But those timelines, let's say the war timeline, for example, it's not just saying, that's not my timeline, I do not consent, I choose this, or, delete. To delete a whole war memory from your multidimensional selves takes an enormous amount of power that most humans haven't even stepped into that full enlightenment power level yet. There are levels. There's not just one earth on the level if you're seeing, well, I'm not choosing that, I'm choosing this. You're multidimensional. What are all the memories from your ancestors, your previous lives, your multi-dimensional lives? There's warriors in there, there's murderers in there, there's rapists in there. There's all these memories that everything exists. We are one, and the collective of everything exists all the time as it pops in and out of being. They're still programs in the matrix that are affecting you and your reality. And the collective overrides what you want. So this isn't just about what you want as an individual. Your individual vote, choice, healing process counts, but it's what we do as a collective. And this is why it's so important that we come together. This is why I created the Patreon channel. The people that work with me in Patreon know I have the key to the main server, the main matrix. I go into it on Patreon. We switch off massive major programs on a collective level in there, not an individual level. By coming into that, you're working as a collective with us. There was a great thing sent around Instagram a couple of weeks ago about how one person that resonates on the frequency of the map of consciousness at, say, 600 or something like that, counterbalances 90,000 people that are on a lower vibrational frequency. So if you are, very clean, clear vessel, you've worked on your DNA, deleted your ancestral lineages of, the war in your DNA from them. By delete, that means turn them off, turn them back to the original blueprint, neutrality. then you're going to be high up on that scale, and you are counterbalancing 100,000, 500,000, maybe even 1 million people if you've been doing the work. So it does make a difference. You don't need a massive group. You don't need the Maharishi effect, which originally was nearly 10,000 people based on 7.8 billion. Because you're a higher frequency, you're counterbalancing. So you've got a group now, like 100 people who are very awake, very enlightened, very pure, been working on themselves, clearing their subconscious, working on their DNA. They're going to be counterbalancing the collective. So you don't need millions of people to create that timeline. You need a certain group of people that have done the work, that are counterbalancing, basically taking control of the collective timeline, because the enlightened people hold the energy to pull everyone up into that timeline. So let's say there's only, for example, let's say, just picking a number out there, that only 2 million people want to be on the one timeline. They want to be on that enlightened timeline where it's fairness for all and redistribution of wealth and all these other lovely things that would make a beautiful world for us. Then only maybe 100 of those 2 million need to become very enlightened to counterbalance what those 2 million want. It'll be what those 100 want, because they're the higher frequency. They've got the more power to change the program in the matrix that we're in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have a question on that. So what if there is like a global event, and I'll use the example of the horrific fires in LA right now. So if there's an event which causes devastation, and we've seen it in history with the Schumann resonance, right? So there can be all this grief, but at the same time, there's this compassion, incredible amount of compassion. Is that going to raise the collective, to put the collective now on a different timeline? I'm just using that as an example.
Absolutely. I spoke about this on my YouTube the other night. So what's happening here is you've got the conspiracy aspect of it. That's the timeline they're going down, and they're looking into direct energy weapons and the smart city and all that stuff from a victim consciousness, that they want to do this to us, they've done this to us, they want to do this to us next. I don't buy into that consciousness over there, but I'm not saying it doesn't exist, because those people that do buy into it, that's what they're creating for themselves by buying into it. So this is why conspiracy stuff and sharing stuff, you need to be very careful what you pick and choose from it. Some of it is taking people into a timeline that's a trap. I'm not saying that there's naughty things not being done, but then there's the other side of it. Well, in order for that side of America that was, I don't know anything about politics, but I do know that the Democrats owned California. I did ask someone to explain it to me. That area, there's a lot of bad stuff going on through the Hollywood, satanic stuff and all that stuff. And, there may be underground tunnels and all sorts of stuff there that we don't know about. And fire is cleansing. So on a spiritual level, in regard to the ascension of the planet, there is a cleansing that is going to happen, and it doesn't matter who's delivering it, whether it's energy weapons, whether it's people's fears or creating it. It needs to happen, because fire cleanses, it cleanses the old energy, but it brings people together and they open their hearts to one another. The greed and materialism has gone out the window. Now it's, what can I do to help my neighbor? Do they need water? And unfortunately, because the way that area has been running over the years, and there's some bad stuff gone on there, we know that for a fact, there's a lot of innocent people suffering as well, but they may have come into this lifetime and agreed, I will have my home burned down to free my ancestors from the wrong they did. So like, they've taken on their karma for their ancestors, and they've come to clear that for their ancestors. There's a lot of that going on at the moment as well. So there's much more to this. It makes me sad when I hear people on Instagram saying, good, kill all the satanic Hollywood celebrities. That's not the case at all. And that's a really low frequency, judgmental, unintelligent, foolish way to look at what's going on there, the devastation that's going on there. People, If they don't do the work, they get pulled into a trauma. It blows neural pathways in the brain, and it allows them to be rewired by their higher consciousness to a higher perspective. Now they've gone into, instead of being behind closed, gated, fenced homes and their money and their riches and their wealth or whatever, they're being forced into a situation where, who are you without this? What are you without this?
Mm.
And it's an opportunity for their true soul, spirit self to come through and be humble and learn and help and love and care for one another. And that opens the heart and that raises the frequency.
There's
So,
always a higher perspective to view things from. And
yeah,
sometimes
and
we forget that. And yet
and
you can just, you can look at, yes, the devastation and a lot of the innocent people, but then there's a higher perspective and it's all perfect.
the higher perspective is whether you believe, some people believe, well, God, why has God done this to these people? Why is God doing this? And praying to God. But the thing is, I see God as this huge, like, computer program that we program. We're a part of it. It's not God judging us or punishing us. God's not going to come in and fix this. We are. We've got to come in and fix this. And the only way we can fix this is with self-refinement and purification. And I just wanted to share something else as well that popped into my head when we were talking about multidimensionalism. I remember years ago talking about black magic, and somebody said to me, "Oh, I don't believe in magic. That's rubbish." Well, I've got a good friend who's a witch in Hollywood, actually, who I'm in touch with this week. She's okay, thankfully. And magic does work. Magic is about moving energy with intention.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like that. So there's good and there's bad. And there's been a lot of that going on over there as well, of fire cleanses, all of these old curses and spells and voodoo and witchcraft. This is prevalent across the world, and it was rife between the 13th and the 17th century. Everyone was into it. So somebody said to me, "Well, I don't believe in black magic, so it can't hurt me." And I'm like, that's a foolish, arrogant statement for this reason. You are not just the you see in the mirror. What you think is 5% of what your consciousness is. 95% of your consciousness is other lifetimes, is everything else that exists. And you're multidimensional. So you may have a more dark side who's practicing black magic in another dimension, but that dark side is affecting you in this dimension because it's in your consciousness. So people have woken up, they've woken up to things like the law of projection, and they think if you see that, then it's yours, right? But it's only yours if it is a trigger. If it triggers you, it's yours. If you can look at something really dark and evil and nasty and have no reaction whatsoever, then your DNA is clean. It's not activated in your DNA. So these people that are out there pointing the finger at they're the bad guys, the satanic this, the satanic that, they need to take Satan out of their own DNA, switch that program off, guys. And then you won't see it in other people.
Janine, how do you suggest people do that?
Well, this is another thing that we're doing on our Patreon channel. That's why I feel I've been given the codes, the key codes to activate the portal, the one portal, because anyone can use it. And it basically reprograms, recalibrates the software in your reality, in your DNA, in your consciousness back to the original blueprint. I was like you, Susan, when you said about, some of these people, they ought to be strung up. I used to feel like that years ago. Now I don't. Now I see what's going on from a higher perspective. And that's where we're meant to be headed, into that higher perspective, not judging. We're taught through religion, don't judge people, but people judge all the time. There's a difference between judgment and discernment. You have to discern. That's a form of judgment. But pointing the finger, it's childlike now. It's wake up, kiddies. You're pointing a finger at yourself. Your own shadows are being reflected back to you through these people here. They've got a job to do. It's just all an illusion. We're living in a simulation. And if people were taught that at an early age, they wouldn't take things so personally. They would understand the law of projection. And this is what Ascension is about. It's about us understanding things from a higher perspective. And certainly without judgment. And I feel like that now. I never used to feel like
Mhm.
that, obviously, but I've done a lot of work. So I was determined to become enlightened because I found out that one person at the frequency I'm at can counterbalance millions of other people. And the same goes for you guys. You're all counterbalancing a lot of people, thousands, tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands yourself. So this is why, coming together in smaller groups of what enlightened people has a massive effect on the collective. We've got to
So
come together.
for someone who's listening to this right now,
Mhm.
how do you explain, we're living in a simulation?
We're living in a simulation. Okay, so you're a soul in a spirit. When you're born, your parents agree to have a child. So what happens is, and this is the story of the stork coming and planting the baby in the womb. What actually goes into the womb is a golden egg, and that's your aura. Further into the pregnancy, the soul, the divine spark, goes into that. And that normally happens around about halfway through the pregnancy, about 20 weeks. And anyone that's had children out there, you'll know that you feel the baby flutter for the first time. That's usually when the soul goes into the spirit. So soul and spirit are two different things. Soul is the essence, the core, the God particle, and the spirit is the energy field, the golden egg around that. Now, anyone who's seen pregnant woman in the kind of third trimester of that, they glow. Why do they glow? Because they got two auras. You got the baby's pure aura radiating from them. That's why pregnant women glow. And that's probably why some women have a depression afterwards, because that bright light has been taken out and it's not inside them 24/7. So there's a dip in their frequency as a result because the baby's no longer in there. So everything within that child, mother, all the people around it, our DNA is like software in a computer, and it projects onto the screen that we see as a reality. And that's the simulation. And it's based on our sensory perception. So you taste, touch, smell, hearing. If you took them away, if you just closed your eyes and took them away, imagine you can't hear anything, you can't see anything, you can't touch, taste anything. What have you got? No mind, pure consciousness, which is what we are. That's exactly what we are. So all of the other sensory perceptions they give us a feeling, a sensation. Light comes in and it refracts through us like a prism the outside world. So when we change what's in us, in our DNA, in our subconscious, in our energy field, the outside changes. And that's what ascension is about, raising your consciousness. And the new earth is about a new projection coming from us. Does that make sense, Susan?
Yes.
Good.
I think it's a lot for just the average person because we've been so programmed.
Yeah.
And so we've been programmed to think a certain way, to do a certain way, to go to school, go to college, go to work. Just we're like robots. And so
Yeah.
we have forgotten the depth of us. We are like God.
We're powerful.
Yeah,
Very
and
powerful.
dumbed we've been dumbed down by the system.
Yeah.
A lot of people have known or angry about it. They're having to pick up the pieces, but in a lot of ways, y'all, it's not easy. If you don't have someone, well, let's say like yourself, Janine, with all of that wisdom and knowledge, people do feel lost in the system. And they don't really know what to do, where to go, where to find their peace. So it's talking about this is good.
The thing is, if there's anyone out there listening to this, and some of the things that certainly me that I'm going to be touching on are out there, but I've done the work, and
Right.
it frustrates me when I see a lot of spiritual teachers out there and influencers out there sharing information like the law of projection, or like, if you don't like the program, just delete it. Well,
Mhm.
I delete programs But to be able to delete big programs takes energy. It uses your psychic energy. And they're not telling people that. So people are going, oh, delete, 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 thinking they're deleted all these programs. They're not powerful enough to do that. You need energy to do that. You've got physical energy and you've got psychic energy. And I was trying to bring that information to people, and some have accepted it and some don't. But there are certain crystals that help people to wake up, that help people to understand. Fluorite, for example, not fluoride.
Right.
Fluorite helps people organize their mind and understand things better. It's a good one. Selenite is white. It's another good one for raising your consciousness. Things like amethyst help people raise their consciousness. So what happens is, if you think about your energy field being, being like an egg shape or a circle, a sphere around you, when you're in a lower frequency, that sphere is small because you've been closed down by your higher self because you're not pure enough to be that power. With great power comes great responsibility. I think that was Spider-Man's uncle that said that. But, this is why we've been dumbed down. When you start to release your judgment or your old religious beliefs or your anger or your rage, then your higher self goes, oh yeah, you're clean enough. We'll activate this next level of your energy field. And it keeps going until they're clearer and clearer and clearer. And that's where the power comes in. We've all met someone where they walk into the room and you can feel them from the other side of the room. That's somebody that's got a big energy field. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're enlightened, because some people just accumulate a lot of energy from other people. But as we become more enlightened, you don't want to judge people. You don't want to blame people. It's just, that's not your first reaction. Everything that happens to us comes from source, even the bad things. People do bad things to us. It's not they did this to me, poor little me. I'm like, no, don't be a victim.
Right.
Your higher self created that for you because they owed you a kick up the backside, or, you were being tested or something like that. Own it, be responsible that you created that. And when we get into that level of thinking, that's when life starts to become more blissful and heaven on earth, because you're not attracting that. You're not attracting the negative people. You're not attracting mean people. You go out, people smile at you in the street. You can feel it. Even the flowers and the trees look more effervescent. They glow.
Yeah.
Lisa and I went out the other day, and we remember that dog we saw. It was just glowing. It was effervescent.
Yeah.
And it was shiny. It was amazing.
Shining. Yeah.
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 That's the world reflecting our light back to us, because we're seeing it in the world around us. So people wake up a bit at a time. Don't get frustrated if it goes over the top of your head or you don't understand it. It's like somebody could give you a book, and somebody gave me a book 20 years ago, and I read the first 3 pages and like, nope. And it was a super high level consciousness book. I just couldn't absorb it. But 10 years later, I was like, where's that book? I'm ready for it now. So it is a process. You can't go too high, too fast, and you get tested as well, so that if you are at that higher powerful level, that you're not going to, rain your wrath down on other people, because you're powerful. You can hurt them, even with your words and your thoughts. So it is a process, and it's, for some people it's slow, for some people it's fast. I've spent 21 years doing this, and I've been doing it fast, but I had a lot of work to do. I've taken on all of my ancestral stuff. I've taken on some of humanity's karma as well, because I know how to do it quick. So it's kept me busy, but everyone's on different levels. And don't compare your kids to your friends' kids. Just don't compare yourself. Just do what's right for you. Take care of you. And you see the difference. I wanted us to talk about the law of projection today, because I think I can honestly say it's one of the most important things I've ever learned in my life. When I see somebody now, instead of pointing the finger, I look at myself and go, wow, that made me angry. I need to heal that in me, because it triggered me. I own it. So, is that your dog, Susan?
Yes.
Bless.
Sorry.
Don't worry about it. I've got mine's quiet today.
He doesn't have an off button.
No. Maybe
And he
invent one.
and he's a territorial, and, this is all his, and he's the king of the kingdom. I thought at one point he was brought to me like, how did I end up with this dog? He's been a lesson for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they do teach us a lot. They do indeed. Laura, I'm curious, how would you explain the simulation? Would you explain it the same way, or have you got a different perspective?
Probably. I mean, I also think about it from sort of like a quantum physics perspective, and that if everything is energy, everything is, you just think of particles, and there is nothing in the physical. When you really think about it, everything breaks down and it's just tiny, tiny little particles moving. So that, to me alone, that image it is all a projection, because nothing really exists. And that's such a hard concept. No matter how much you understand this, it's a hard concept that the chair you're sitting on, the desk in front of you, is not really there as we think it is. So to me, I kind of see it all as everything is a simulation, because we're creating it all from the inside, which is basically what you were saying.
Sure.
So.
Lisa, what's your take?
I completely am on that same track, that we create it all. And I've realized lately that nothing on the external world or in the mainstream media, or even what, some of the people like I used to listen to, like Scott McKay, Street Fighter, very
Mhm.
good guy, right? But I don't have to listen to any of that anymore, because I get the gist of what's playing out. And I'm looking at, my timeline looks like this. So we're powerful creators, right? And once we realize that, it's like, that's why Abraham and Esther Hicks says, what is it that you want? That's what Bashar says too. He asks, what is it that you want? Do you want to be a victim to this and we can continue to blame these people? Or is it like, what are we creating? Because that's on the table for us. So, and yeah, and for those people in California, it's a clean slate. So like Janine, when you said, like, what are those people holding on to? Is it more like it's a house, like when someone loses their house, for example, in a foreclosure, that's another opportunity to start fresh. But people look at it as if it's like a big attack on them. It's so personal. It's just like, hey, that challenge was brought to us for a reason. And I've had situations like that in my past too, where,
Mhm.
my partner and I in business, we were earning really good money, and then the rug was pulled from under us. And then what happens is that you can either take them to court and it's going to cost you a lot of money, or you just, okay, I've got skills, I'm moving on, I'm starting from scratch again. And so I've learned to become good at that. Right. And that's intimidating for a lot of people to start from scratch, because again, the program says, or one of the programs out there says, is you do this when you graduate, that's another, the school is the program in itself, right?
Mhm.
College, marriage, career, all of that. And if that doesn't go to plan, holy, what's happening to me? Ah! You know what, I think what we need to realize is that is, like, again, opportunities. And so Janina, you and I talked about before, like, okay, I want to live the highest version of myself right here and now. And then it's like, whoa, I, I didn't realize that. I don't know if I can navigate through that, but somehow we do navigate through the programming, we navigate through this and that, but allowing ourselves to feel, keeping the things that are irrelevant to our day-to-day life. Like, do I need to listen to that today or that, whatever? It's just like, no, I'm going to stroll to the beat of my own drum today, and I'm going to be in my happy place. And that's not to be like, not sensitive to what's going on, in other parts of the world, California, et cetera, or North Carolina, or where the, disasters
Mhm.
are, because there have been a lot of that over the last, especially 4 or 5 years, and we were kind of told it was coming, and we're seeing it play out. It's just that I believe in sending out the love and really getting to a place where that doesn't affect me, because we can think of a million things that can affect us. And again, it's not being desensitized from it. It's just that, how do we help those people when we're feeling like victims ourselves? We're not helping them. We're not capable in our entirety, in our being, to help anybody that way.
Oh, and we've all been victims. It's part of life, you know,
Yeah.
and we've all got history of victimhood in our consciousness and things like that. And there's so many different ways that we can look at things. And I'm happy with the way I view it now, because it makes my life easier to rise above than to be angry or to be pointing the finger, and to see it for what it is. That there is, you know, that's how I've survived the hard times. It's like I rise above it and see it. It's just a simulator. What am I needing to learn from this? What do I need to let go? What is this projecting, you know, reflecting back to me that I need to release from my system, so that I am neutral to it? And there's so many different ways that we can help ourselves with that. When you understand how your energy field, how this simulator works, how you can switch off programs, switch on programs, there's so much we can do. It's like movies like The Secret brought out the law of attraction and stuff like that. But at the end of it, I was disappointed. I was like, why didn't they all get together and let's create world peace? Let's manifest world peace and an end of homelessness, instead of, you know, a girlfriend with big boobs and a fancy car and a big house, which is like what sorry guys, but you know, most men, 90%, that's what they would be choosing. And so women are just as, you know, a lot of women are just as bad as well. I'm sorry, but we don't come together for the highest good of all. And this is what is important, and this is why I created the Patreon channel. It's like, let's come together and meditate and open the portal and release the past and meditate for the highest good of all earthlings. And I don't just mean humans, I mean animals and Mother Earth when I say earthlings. Because we're all one, and they have an effect on the mass consciousness as well. Think about that. The animals have effect on the mass consciousness. They are important enough. And how many 2 billion are killed every week to be eaten? All that fear is being pumped into the mass consciousness. See, these are things most people wouldn't even consider, about the energetic, spiritual repercussions of factory farming and stuff like that, which is a whole other topic, conversation. But I just look at things differently, and that makes me a bit weird to some people. But I love myself as a weird and wonderful person now. Instead of worrying about what people think of me, I don't care anymore what people think of me. I stand in my power, I stand in my truth, and I share what I can for the highest good. I may not be right all the time, but I'm doing the best I can.
To me, that's how we were intended to be. And it's the programs that have taken us so far away from that. And now we're trying to crawl our way back
Mm-hmm.
to where you're already at,
Mm-hmm.
Janine.
Welcome to
I'm
Earth
not,
School.
I still work on myself
I
now,
know. I know, but on a
every
scale,
day.
yeah, from me and you, from a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably a 4 and you're a 10. But
But who's keeping track?
well, I'm not keeping track. I'm just trying to. Our listeners are listening, and so
Mm-hmm.
they may be sitting there going, "Wow." Just even talking about all this stuff is just a new concept. Like,
Yeah.
wow, it's all. I mean, I remember, meeting Janine and hanging out and doing our girl things and doing things that were all different to me, but because it was all new to me. All of her, I would say, all her great wisdom. I remember. I don't know if you remember this, Janine, but I remember we were at a concert. Went to it was one of those off bands of the Rolling Stones, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. And I remember we walked out, and both of us just walked out into the sidewalk, and we're walking down the street. It was night, and it was like people were just like, they were just like like looking at us, like, and I looked at Janine and I went, well, I go, what's going on? She goes, it's your aura. It's our aura. It's our shine, and people are picking up on it.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, because that was a moment for me that it was telling me that what I was learning was real. It
Yeah.
wasn't just hocus pocus, what some people think, that it was real. And And when you do get to that point, you do, people gravitate towards you, they want to tell you their problems, and I mean, I just had a situation like that with a lady I'm doing an estate sale for, and she's just under all this trauma. And I finally just grabbed her hands and I pulled her to me. I said, I want you to listen to me. And I'm not judging, but I want you to listen to me. And I calmed her down. I said, everything that you speak that comes out of your mouth, it will happen. So think about that when you go to speak. And she's just like, she looked at me and she just got really calm. And she goes, you're right. I said, I know. I said, and it's hard. It's hard to change those habits. I said, I've been there myself and I still do it to this day. But until you acknowledge just a simple thing like that, how it can start the domino effect of us moving to where we were intended to be.
Yeah, it's just planting one little seed, giving someone a flower.
Wow, that's what every single one, Lisa, Laura, I mean, that's, hopefully when we walk out of our house every day or we start our day, that we do enlighten someone and, enlighten my grandchildren because they're so pulled so strongly, so many different ways in school and this expectation and this program and how everything's supposed to be for them.
The first 7 years of their life is critical. So that's when we get hardwired with the programming. It is.
So just to kind of bring us full circle, there was something when we were talking about projecting and I know we touched on predictive programming a little bit, but there was something that occurred to me, and this can kind of, I think, bring it all together. So think of people historically like Nostradamus. Think about people that were like experts or that they prophesized and they saw the future. And think about how many generations that was passed on about what's going to come. So what happens is that gets in all of our psyche, right? And then we look and we say, wow, this is what Nostradamus said was going to happen. And of course, there was interpretations because it's all written in a language that we wouldn't necessarily be able to understand. But that's just one example of even generationally, the same programs, these events are going to happen. And, you could just see it. You could see it. What's the next thing that's supposed to happen? That's on a level that's not so undercurrent because people talk about it all the time. I mean, you ask most people right now, they will know who Nostradamus is. But think about all the subtle, with movies, with news, with things that we're constantly hearing that are getting into our subconscious to think about what's going to happen. And you know what? We actually end up creating it. So it kind of goes back to where we started, but there are so many levels to it that are below our level of consciousness that is affecting what we're projecting out there, therefore what we're creating. I just thought that was important.
Yeah, it is important. Brilliant. And what's left in the earth as well. Mother Earth has got all the memories. So it's not just about healing us. We're the center of the universe. We're the center of all of it. But we are working in conjunction with Mother Earth's grid and what is stored in there from the past as well. So, there is a lot of work to do and there's no quick fix. Only we can do it. And meditation is a massively important part of that. We should do a show about meditation, I think, as well. Okay, girls. Thank you. That was brilliant today. I really enjoyed it anyway. I hope everyone at home enjoyed it. Thanks for joining me. And
thanks, everyone.
We will see you all again soon, guys, on Talking Timelines.
See you next time.
Bye, girls.
Bye.
Disclaimer: the content in this podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only. The views, opinions, and information shared do not necessarily represent those of the hosts, but is provided for additional perspectives. None of the hosts are medical professionals, so we do not dispense medical advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any health-related issues. And thank you for listening to Talking Timelines.